Peace and harmony with you here today, focusing in on relationship dynamics with a covert narcissist and the negative validation that ensues as a result of their reticent, aloof behavior, with their withdrawing behavior, their retreating behavior. How this really dramatically impacts the spouse, the significant others, and family members who are involved with a covert narcissist. I receive a number of inquiries from those who are in covert narcissist relationships, and they're really kind of on the fence as to whether to, stay in the relationship or separate or move on. And, I think, arriving at your own decision is very important once you gather all the information. However, I would just like to zoom in and focus in really on identifying some of the behavioral impacts that occur when you are intimately and closely related with a covert narcissist. Now, a narcissist, as defined by the DSM-5R, is in essence a personality disorder. So, personalities are originated by our thoughts, feelings, and our behaviors. So that in essence is our identity. That's our personality. And largely, our personality, the seat of that is in the mind itself. So really our personality is our reactions, our beliefs, our feelings, our attitudes. And then, how those then impact our behaviors and our treatment of others is very significant, especially when we see how they ripple out to others in the environment with a covert narcissist. So their personality disorder, really what is the defining aspect of it, is really their sort of withdrawn behavior while in a relationship. In essence, a stonewalling, a very much of a silent treatment. They might be there presently, physically. They might provide, they might bring in the paycheck, they might be present for dinners. Things might be quote unquote hunky-dory. I mean, there's no, maybe divorce ensuing. There might be some caustic arguments. But, basically it is marriage as you know it, or a relationship as you know it. But the withdrawing, the impact of that is that the covert narcissist tends to be very aloof, very separated from the people in their life as a whole. So meaning that they have a whole agenda which is not confided in, which is not expressed, which is not a part of their daily interactions. So the interactions might be very superficial, might be very glib, might be very short, and shallow meaning really without a lot of emotional backing, not a lot of backbone, not a lot of content, a lot of substance. In other words, shallow meaning very cursory, very very much small talk. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, you really kind of expect and need there to be some depth. So depth meaning a little bit of moral discussion, back and forth, processing things together. If you live with someone who doesn't really acknowledge you, doesn't really mirror back to you positive things about yourself, or acknowledging you as a person, if they're just very glib, very superficial, very much aloof, it tends to, in a sense, grate on you, but it's not in a really generally outwardly expressed way. In other words, the person tends to really just mirror their quietness. In other words, they have made many attempts to communicate, but the covert narcissist, because of their aloof and disdain for others, in essence, and their retreating behavior, they've basically conditioned their spouse to be mirroring of that same energy, or live on that same energy vibration, that same wavelength. So the spouse really, then tends to withdraw, or feeling, depressed, feeling anxious, and, really basically is programmed to not react to the covert narcissist and really shut down a very vital part of themselves. So realizing this, though, if you identify this, it's very important to understand then these self-esteem impacts, and really a lot of the other sort of internal value systems that are part of yourself as a whole, that how they can impact you, your ability to get in touch with your feelings, your drives, your energy, your communication skills, your processing skills, your verbal skills, all these, and then also ripple over into employment, and your own friendships, and, how you pursue those. So it's very important to understand that oftentimes a spouse or a child also will tend to interpret this withdrawing behavior in a sort of, I'm not worth speaking to, I'm not worth looking at, I'm not worth, my weight, I'm not worth an opinion, I'm not worth a hello. So this tends to be interpreted as a negative message. In other words, the spouse becomes like a sponge for this negativity. They tend to absorb this treatment in a very sort of toxic, caustic way, which they then, coupled with the inability to know how to communicate it, oftentimes there's this excuse like, we can't communicate, which is just an excuse. When you really think about it, I mean, as long as, you have a voice and your voice is working, you should be able to put, some sentences together and have a communication. So if it's like, if there's a communication breakdown, I mean, in essence, it's a failure on one or both parties to be able to be adult and come to terms and be responsible, which is the ability to respond. If you're irresponsible, you are lacking the ability to respond. You're having inability, so you're not responding, you're not acknowledging. And, the covert narcissist, not only that heightened sense of self, but also that lack of empathy, the inability to understand the feelings, needs, wishes, and desires of another is described as a lack of empathy, an empathy deficit. So it's actually an inability, almost as if if you would think of like heart arrhythmia, which means, an unnatural rhythm of the heart. So it's an inability of the heart to beat cohesively or in a regular beat. So that's an inability. So we can see an actual, manifestation in the body. So imagine, the same, process deficit going on physiologically within the brain mind, thought process, which is the action of the brain, is the mind. So just as like the liver, the function of your liver is to take out the toxins, out of your blood, and so that you don't have a you've got a filter system there. Likewise, the function of the mind is the processing of thoughts and opinions and emotions, and then these are then expressed in the body as feelings. So realizing then that the covert narcissist has an inability to express empathy. So there's a certain, thought process disorder, if you will. And then, of course, there's varying stages of this, varying degrees of severity, where they exhibit a lack of empathy. So if you're feeling that disconnect, that real void, that real kind of cold, callous, like inability to connect, that's generally due to that lack of empathy. And so if you've hit this person is generally unable to change, realizing it is an inability. And so, if you can acknowledge that, accept it, you might wish it otherwise. You might want to, I wish. A lot of people wish that they could bargain and just, think that it's something to do with them and that they're not expressing themselves correctly, and then they're trying harder, and the back and forth and the back and forth and the back and forth. Really, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you try to correct the relationship and make things different, oftentimes with a severely covert narcissist individual who has an extreme lack of empathy, I mean, there's nothing you can do, in the world to change this person. I mean, it's just, and no matter who else tries to change them, they're going to go through the same situation. It's not going to change regardless of person. It's an internal deficit. It's an internal processing issue that is indelible and permanent part of that person and their personality. So, if you've had a lot of grief regarding this, I understand. But please do acknowledge this situation, circumstance within this person, and let them go in love and light, and know that you did the best that you could. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.